Now, we want to delve into Martyrs Wildlife. On the 3rd of March is World Wildlife Day. What exactly, what occurs on that particular day? How do we celebrate World Wildlife Day?
We celebrate World Wildlife Day by, especially from my perspective, I work for Big Life Foundation, by focusing on what has been happening, especially in local communities, conservation initiatives that have been undertaken to make sure that communities embrace wildlife conservation, working with partners in the conservation community, as well as working with the Kenya Wildlife Service.
All right. And what awareness, because I'm guessing on the 3rd of March, there's always an awareness that you're trying to push out there. And what is it going to be this year?
The awareness that we're going to look at this year, we've, there before that we used to, the focus used so much to be on poaching. In the area where I come from, which we call the Amboseli Savo Kilimanjaro ecosystem, where Big Life works, we've really, we can say comfortably that we've really come on top of the poaching problem. But then other issues and challenges have emerged because when conservation succeeds, wildlife populations blossom, and we work in areas whereby conservation goes hand in hand with other economic activities and where people live. So the human population is also growing, and the space remaining the same. So definitely there you have a problem whereby opportunities for conflict really goes high. We especially with elephants and with predators. Elephants invade people's land, they kill people, predators kill livestock. So if that conflict is not managed well, then it becomes a huge threat to wildlife conservation.
All right. And what about you, Kahinde? What are your sentiments on when it comes to Martyrs human-wildlife conflict, considering there was a case yesterday about 2 lions been taken away? Just bring us up to speed on the human-wildlife conflict.
Human-wildlife conflict has been there since time immemorial, so it's nothing new.
All right.
What is new is our lack of strategies to tackle it effectively. Whether we use the law or we use other mechanisms, it has not been a walk in the park, so to speak. Given the fact that over 60 to 70% of all wildlife in Kenya lives outside protected areas, then human-wildlife conflict is actually bound to happen. But what we are trying to celebrate on this World Wildlife Day is the successes of conservation and management, as well as taking stock of the failures, which include inability to tackle conflict effectively, but also try to raise awareness about opportunities that arise in order to secure the successes, but also address the failures, you know, moving forward. So human-wildlife conflict causes an enormous economic and social cost to our country. But in addition to that, the helplessness that many people who coexist with wildlife feel is actually a national tragedy, much more than anything else. So we, on this particular day, want to remind both government and non-government players that there is a need to address effectively and conclusively in the short, medium, and long term relationships between people and wildlife, especially large predators like lions, leopards, and cheetahs.
Yeah, considering tourism is one of the top economic drivers for the nation. Now, when it comes to human-wildlife conflict, I'd just like to ask, who is it? Ni sisi tunawachokoza ama ni wanyama wanatuchokoza?
Let me respond. My earlier statement is you can never really eliminate human-wildlife conflict, and I don't think that's the issue. If a lion doesn't kill your livestock, a rat will eat your maize.
Very true.
Okay,
Very true.
if you avoid one snake at one corner, you'll still find a different kind in another corner. So it's the realities of the day. And that's not what we should be talking about. The point is, do we know the extent of human-wildlife conflict in the first place? There are some counties in this country who experience such an enormous economic cost from human-wildlife conflict, higher than all the per capita income in their own counties. But nobody talks about it. When we talk about human-elephant conflict, there are solutions, there are ways to minimize it. And we should not continue talking about how bad things are. We need many forums to start talking which solutions do we apply when and where.
All right. So
and we need to move forward, with that.
So, gentlemen, from where you're sitting, what are the solutions then?
Before we come to the solutions, I'd like just to add to the issue of you saying nisisi tunawachokoza ni wao wanatuchokoza. There is a saying in Kimasai that says mepala loboita, that if people are in the same space, there are always opportunities for friction and conflict.
Yes.
So it's the same with humans.
Even in our household.
Yeah, even in our households, in our families, in our places of work,
yes.
There will always be conflict. What I'd like to say to what Leakali has said is that it's very important that this conflict is managed well, especially on communal lands. And I agree with him that wildlife conservation has not been given the priority that it deserves, especially in view of the fact that most of the wildlife, 80%, are on communal lands. But if you look at really the economic benefits that come to these communities, it's very little. And going forward, if you look, for example, at conservation in Europe and North America, it's been lost at the cost of economic development. So here in Africa, in Kenya, wildlife conservation is one area where we have a huge comparative advantage because we still have wild open spaces, huge swaths of land teeming with wildlife species, including the iconic species like the elephants and the lions. So it's one area that if we are really smart enough as stakeholders, including the government, I can say comfortably that we are sitting on a gold mine.
Yes,
we normally say like we are sitting on an elephant mine because as the global human population increases, urbanization grows, there will be a strong need for people from all over the world to come to a place whereby you can sit relaxed and really stretch your gaze over the horizon or the savannah and see a giraffe browsing or a leopard chasing an antelope, and you just feel that spiritual relaxation. So if as part of that is what Leakali has said, is that this conflict really needs to be managed well. And the focus has been so much on addressing threats like poaching and habitat destruction, but this is not enough. This is not enough because communities that stay with the wildlife, they bear a lot of costs, ranging from, as I said earlier, elephants killing people, invading cropland, herbivores competing for scarce resources like water and pasture, to predators killing livestock. So as stakeholders, if we are not, if we don't strategize well enough, then it will reach a point down the road where these communities will just throw up their hands and say, enough is enough. We want to do something else with our land because all we keep on getting are losses and very little economic benefit.